Our final speaker is Victoria Watson, who is a senior lecturer in architecture here in the department at the University of Westminster. Victoria coordinates the undergraduate history and theory course and is a studio tutor on the MA architecture degree at the Royal College of Art. She is a partner of Dr. Watson Architects, a not-for-profit organisation specialising in the relationship between painting and building in architecture.
What's that?
She's contributed articles about modern architecture, colour theory and aesthetics to a variety of journals and magazines. In 2010 she won a Rome Scholarship and her 2012 book, Utopian Adventure, The Corvial Void, was published. Her architectonic models, derived from the study of colour in 20th century avant-garde practices, have been exhibited at the Royal Academy. And some of her work forms part of the exhibition we have.
Right. So, the Earth is flat and square. Yves Klein's paintings of Thunderclouds. So, let's just try that. So this presentation is about one artist's attempts to paint thunderclouds. His name was Yves Klein. Klein is of interest to Monsoon Air because at the time he began to paint thunderclouds, he already was notorious for his proposals for an architecture of the air. And Klein explicitly mentioned monsoons as included within the scope of air architectures, which, as he explained, should adapt themselves to the given circumstances and natural conditions. So I'll just take you through I was going to talk about the science of the monsoon as I went through these, but it's not necessary. These are some of Klein's Thundercloud paintings. So I'll stop there and carry on. The monsoon system runs thanks to the agency of the transitive energy we call heat. Heat is always at work in the environment, even if we human beings are sometimes unable to perceive it directly. In the many and varied processes artists have deployed for producing paintings, some have relied on heat, but Klein is one of the few to have worked with heat in the mode of fire. In 1961, Klein was given the opportunity to use the facilities of the testing centre of Gaz de France. That's in 1961. So we're talking about working with cutting-edge technologies. It meant he had access to up-to-date equipment and expertise that he could use to continue his, up until then, sporadic and unstructured investigations of burning as a means of image making. Klein worked with a large fire torch, using it like a paintbrush. He fired it at sheets of fire-retardant board that resisted the combustion process, giving him some control over the production of the images. Klein's fire painting included water, a staged video, of which this is a clip from the staged video, shows his friend Alex Costa dressed up as a fireman, following Klein's gestures and intermittently dousing the flame as Klein, dressed in a suit, fires it from a torch. As a consequence, spots and drips are registered on the boards where they contrast with the burnt patches. Later, Klein expanded some of the fire paintings by adding colour, which contributes considerably to the dynamism of and the radiance of the images. And it's these fire paintings with additional colour that I'm referring to as Yves Klein's paintings of Thunderclouds. The Thundercloud paintings are exemplary of Klein's working method. So on the one hand, he went to considerable lengths to leave documentary evidence of a set of events, activities and participations that record the actual production of the paintings. On the other hand, there are the objects themselves, of which this is a picture, the physical artifacts that can be exhibited for contemplation in a detached gallery setting. And those two modes of activity in Klein's work are very important. The recording of the documentary evidence that records events, activities and participations. For example, the photographs of him, he's dressed up in a suit, he's using this fire torch to produce the paintings. His friend's dressed up as a fireman, spraying water. That's all recorded in photographs and in videos. And then on the other hand, the actual physical artifacts, which can be completely detached from that mode of research and shown in an art gallery or whatever. One thing to notice about the Thundercloud paintings is that there's no documentary evidence, or documentary record, I should say, of the addition of colour. And what that does, it leaves the circumstances of the colour work somewhat open and mysterious. And I think this openness and mysterious contributes a great deal to the charm of the paintings. As we look at them, the paintings seem to evoke extra dimensions that are hard to resist, and the viewer is poised on the brink of some other space, as if poised on the brink of some other space, or they might actually be poised on the brink of some other space, because I'm not entirely sure myself what space is. But anyway, either as if or actually poised on the brink of some other space, objective, socially conditioned sensibilities recede into the background. And it's as if we're looking into, or maybe we are looking into, a primeval space where a battle between energy, matter and form seems to be constantly waging. In Klein's Thundercloud paintings, the battle is, of course, entirely fictional, with only a passing resemblance to the thermodynamics of actual monsoon thundercloud formation. But the fact that Klein worked directly with fired heat and sprayed water does condition the look of the paintings. Unlike others of his paintings, and here I'm thinking about his anthropometries, his paintings of levitating bodies, his monochrome paintings, these others of his paintings, they all tend to look cold, or cool, I think is a better word, whereas these paintings look hot. Now, sadly, not long after Klein had done these paintings, he died. So he never got around to doing a thing that he used to like to do with his work, which is to revisit the things he'd made and then retrospectively locate them in relationship, well, in this case, retrospectively locate these in relationship to the architecture of the air. So one way to approach the paintings today is to take these paintings as evidence of Klein's thinking about how to adapt air architecture to the seasonal condition, the seasonal monsoon condition of rain. Now, one of the most challenging features of the architecture of the air was Klein's solution for what he termed, he called it the last obstacle, that being the roof, the screen that separates us from the sky. To overcome the problem, Klein came up with the idea of a floating roof of air, which would regulate the temperature and shelter the space below. Now, a Kleinian air roof is not an inflatable, make no mistakes about that. It's a layer of air that's differentiated from the air around it by compression only. It's not sealed within a pillow. Now, like many avant-garde artists, Klein was very suspicious of what he termed the miracles of technology, and he didn't like to rely on technological solutions for what he regarded as problems of art. Be that as it may, in order to function, the air roof would have required considerable technological ingenuity, including enormous compressors and blowing machines, which would have produced a continuous noisy din as they sucked in and squeezed out air. Just as the technology required to realize air architecture seems somewhat extravagant, so its programmatic justification seems a little strange. Air architecture was to accommodate an outdoor-oriented urbanity. Remember, we're back in 1960 here, 1959, possibly, where people would be free to roam naked, unimpaired by clothing, familial relationships, or the need to work. But in a monsoon context, the idea of outdoor urbanity carries a different set of cultural and climatic connotations to those adduced as justifications for the Kleinian roof. For example, I don't have direct experience of this, but I understand that within a monsoon context, many groups within the populations subjected to monsoon rains actually like to be outdoors when the clouds burst, and that they celebrate the deluge as a release from the oppressive heat of the dry season, but also as a relief from the anxiety of potential drought, crop failure, and ultimately hunger and starvation if the rain should fail. Now, assuming Klein was aware of the sacral, festive, and celebratory aspects of monsoon rain, then it seems likely that he would have wanted to adapt the principles of air architecture to work with those conditions. And so it's my contention that Klein was interested in the possibilities of introducing colour into the monsoon rain itself. And it's the beginnings of this thought that the Thundercloud paintings were exploring. Now, there's evidence that Klein had already experimented with the possibilities of mixing colour and rain. So this installation piece from 1957, it's actually called Blue Rain, and it consists of a dozen or so, these things you can see here, a dozen or so thin painted 2 to 3 metre high long rods hung from the ceiling in a grid formation. And according to one critic, the lines of blue appear as temporal, fluid markings dangling in space. The critic continues, they become a kind of climate. Among the what he called the cosmogony imprints that Klein made in 1960, there are several that involved rain, where Klein used pigments to colour paper and then exposed the surfaces to changing weather conditions over time. So in his Chelsea Hotel manifesto, Klein relates how he created one cosmogony by placing a freshly coated canvas on the roof of his car and then driving from Paris to Nice. So I'll just quote Klein. Apparently this is the cosmogony that goes with the car drive. I felt the urge, I seem to be talking into this, it's right strange. Just goes to show that I'm wired slightly differently to the equipment. I felt the urge, I'll carry on. I felt the urge to register the signs of atmospheric behaviour by recording on a canvas the instantaneous traces of spring showers, of south winds, and of lightning. Needless to say, the last mentioned ended in a catastrophe. I placed the canvas, freshly coated with paint, upon the roof of my white Citroën. It's in the 1960s here. As I zoomed down Route 7 at the speed of 100 kilometres an hour, very, very important that, the heat, the cold, the light, the wind and the rain all combined to age my canvas prematurely. At least 30 or 40 years were condensed into one day. So let that be a warning to those of you who zoom down Route 7 for their holidays in the summer. In 1961, as his solo exhibition Monochrome and Fire, Klein showed a Blue Rain piece once again, but this time it was accompanied by a similar installation in pink. So this one is Pink Rain. Later on the same year, in November, Klein showed his planetary reliefs for the first time. And these were made by taking imprints from castings of terrestrial relief maps and then carefully painting them blue, or carefully applying a coat of blue paint. Not just any old paint, I hasten to add, but International Klein Blue, a specialist paint developed by the artist himself to preserve the soft, dusty look of unbound pigments. For Klein, the imprints were a way to picture planet Earth. He thought of them as momentary captures of what in reality is in reality a whirling cloud of cosmic dust orbiting the planet as it spins on its axis. So those are the things that the previous two presentations have been talking about. Klein believed the Earth was flat and square, and that the dusty turbulence was generated by the dual rotation of a square Earth spinning about its centre, and then a spun Earth rotating about a vertical axis, and then between the two of them creating a spherical dynamic. Here he is thinking about that thought and enjoying it in space. Now, according to Klein, the apparent stasis and solidity of the terrestrial surface, as we humans usually perceive it, is merely a consequence of the way human sensibilities have evolved. The human perceptual apparatus is organised in such a way that humans are blind to the clouds of spinning dust that actually form the terrestrial body. The whirling diffuse matter feels solid to the human touch, and so we humans will perceive the Earth as stable, fixed, unmovable. Now, my speculation is that Klein wanted to make the true nature of the terrestrial body perceptible to humans, that he would have wanted to do this, and that this ambition was linked to the idea of impregnating monsoon rain with base pigments. I think the Thundercloud paintings should be understood as kind of tests or sketches for this highly improbable project. Now, I don't mean improbable here in the sense of that which is unlikely. I mean, of course it's unlikely. It's very, very unlikely indeed. I mean improbable in the sense of that to which we are totally blind, rather in the way that a fish is blind to water. If we consider a flying fish, for a brief moment the creature leaves its habitual milieu to hover in another alien medium, then it plunges back. Now, does the fish remember the moment of suspension? I don't know, but surely it's affected by it in some way. Klein's research was all about the possibilities of a leap into the improbable, a leap which he himself attempted on many occasions and in many different forms. And I think in some respect it's what cost him his life. He died very young. Now for me, it's important to revisit Klein precisely because of this factor of improbability that's captured in his work. And I hope, or possibly, working with improbability might be a valid approach for contemporary research. I mean, in many respects, it is a very valid approach for contemporary research, but I'm referring to this particular sense of improbability that Klein was getting at here, rather than the kind of improbability that we had very elegantly explained to us in the first lecture about the science of climate research. So I hope that working with improbability might have a place in contemporary research, especially where the research is studying imperceptible agencies such as weather and heat, and at the same time is trying to understand these imperceptible agencies as factors in a world that is irreducible to, but at the same time inextricable from the habits and behaviours of human agents, and many of whom make paintings and architectures. That's what I have to say. Thank you.